They say love knows no boundaries, but in the weathered fishing town of Saltcliffe, no one expected it to bridge a 56-year gap. Clara Thornton, at 75, was a fixture in this coastal haven, her silver hair as familiar as the lighthouse that hadn't shone in decades. If anyone had whispered that her quiet life would soon tangle with a 19-year-old artist's dreams, the townsfolk would have laughed over their morning coffee at Millie's diner. Yet, as the sea has a way of turning tides, Clara's story was about to reshape Saltcliffe's shores. Stay with me, because what happened next didn't just stir whispers, it lit a beacon that changed everything. Clara's cottage sat on a bluff overlooking the gray Atlantic, its clapboard walls faded from years of salt and wind. Once, it had been alive with her husband George's laughter and the chatter of book clubs she hosted as Saltcliffe's librarian. Now, a decade after George's death, the rooms echoed only with the creak of floorboards and the distant crash of waves. Clara, with her sharp blue eyes and hands still steady enough to mend old books, carried a secret heavier than loneliness, early-stage dementia, diagnosed 6 months ago. She hadn't told a soul, not even her sister Margaret, who lived across town and visited only to hint at selling Clara's cottage for its prime seaside view. Margaret's calls were short, her words sharp, always circling back to property values. Clara wasn't fooled. She knew Margaret saw her as a fading asset, not a sister. Each morning, Clara walked the cliff path, her cane tapping the uneven stones, her mind replaying fragments of her youth, cataloging books, dancing with George under the stars, dreaming of restoring the old lighthouse. The dementia hadn't stolen her clarity yet, but it loomed like a fog on the horizon, making her cherish every lucid moment. That September morning, the air was crisp, the sky a bruised purple over the sea. Clara paused by the town square, where a new mural had appeared on the side of the bait shop. It was a vivid scene of the lighthouse in its glory days, beams cutting through a stormy night, painted in blues and golds that seemed to pulse with life. She stood, transfixed, her cane forgotten in her hand. "That's some painting," she said aloud, not expecting an answer. A voice answered anyway. "Thanks. Took me 3 nights." A young man stepped from behind a stack of lobster traps, paint-splattered jeans hanging loose on his lean frame. Lucas Reed, 19, had dark curls tucked under a worn cap and eyes that held both mischief and resolve. Clara knew of him. Saltcliffe was small, and Lucas's murals had been the talk of the town, some calling them art, others vandalism. He painted to support his single mother, Lila, who cleaned houses to make ends meet. "It's the lighthouse," Clara said, her voice soft. "You've made it shine again." Lucas grinned, wiping paint from his hands. "Used to hear stories about it guiding ships home. Figured it deserved a comeback, even if just on a wall." Clara's heart stirred, a warmth she hadn't felt in years. "I used to dream of fixing that lighthouse myself. Wrote a whole proposal for the council once. They laughed it off, said it was a relic." Lucas tilted his head, studying her. "Doesn't look like a relic in your eyes. You talk like you can still see it glowing." She chuckled, a rare sound. "Careful, young man. Flattery doesn't work on me." But her smile betrayed her. They talked longer than Clara expected. Lucas shared how he'd taught himself to paint, sneaking into the library after hours to study art books Clara had once shelved. She told him about the lighthouse's history, how it saved a fishing fleet in '62, how she and George used to picnic in its shadow. For the first time in months, Clara didn't feel the weight of her diagnosis. Lucas listened, not with the impatience of youth, but with a quiet intensity, as if her words were colors he could paint with. "Want to see the sketch?" he asked, pulling a worn notebook from his bag. He flipped to a page of pencil lines, the lighthouse surrounded by waves and gulls. Clara traced a finger over the drawing, her eyes catching a detail, a tiny figure in a scarf, standing at the lighthouse door. "Is that me?" she asked, half laughing. Lucas shrugged, sheepish. "Saw you walking by yesterday, staring at the wall. Thought you belonged in the picture." Clara's throat tightened. No one had seen her, not really, since George. Her sister saw a deed, the townsfolk saw an old librarian. But this boy, barely out of high school, had painted her into his vision of hope. "Your trouble, Lucas Reed," she said, but her voice was warm. He offered to walk her home, citing the uneven path. She protested but let him, her cane clicking beside his scuffed sneakers. At her gate, she invited him in for tea, half expecting him to decline. He didn't. Inside, her cottage was a museum of books and faded photos, but Lucas didn't fidget or check his phone. He asked about a framed sketch of the lighthouse, and Clara pulled out her old proposal, yellowed but detailed. They pored over it, Lucas sketching new ideas in the margins, his excitement infectious. "You think it could still happen?" he asked. "Restoring it?" Clara hesitated, the fog of her diagnosis creeping into her thoughts. "Maybe not for me. Time's tricky these days." Lucas's eyes narrowed, not with pity, but with resolve. "Time's tricky for everyone. Doesn't mean we stop dreaming." She smiled, but a shadow crossed her face. She hadn't meant to tell him, but the words slipped out. "I have dementia, Lucas. Early, but it's there. Some days, I forget where I parked my thoughts." He didn't flinch or offer empty platitudes. "Then we'll make the days you remember count," he said simply. Clara stared at him, this boy who painted light into forgotten places. For the first time, she felt not just seen, but understood. As he left, promising to return with more sketches, Clara stood at her window, watching his figure fade into the dusk. The town was already whispering, "Old Mrs. Thornton and that mural boy," but Clara didn't care. Something had shifted, like a tide turning. She didn't know it yet, but that morning spark would soon ignite a storm that would light up Saltcliff's shores. This story's spark has caught your heart. Keep reading, because what happened next will leave you breathless. The salt air of Saltcliff carried secrets as easily as it carried the cries of gulls, and by late September, Clara Thornton's name was on every tongue. The 75-year-old retired librarian, once a quiet fixture in her cliffside cottage, was now the subject of murmurs that swirled from the docks to Millie's diner. It started with a simple sight: Lucas Reed, the 19-year-old muralist with paint-stained hands and a dreamer's grin, walking up Clara's path with a sketchbook under his arm. To the townsfolk, it was as odd as a whale beaching on Main Street. Clara, with her silver hair and cane, and Lucas, barely out of high school, made no sense together. But inside her cottage, where books lined the walls like old friends, something extraordinary was taking root. Since their meeting at the lighthouse mural, Lucas had become a regular visitor. It began with a promise to show Clara more sketches, but it grew into something more. He'd knock after his morning classes, his backpack heavy with art supplies, and Clara would have tea ready, her sharp blue eyes brighter than they'd been in years. They'd sit at her oak table, cluttered with her old lighthouse proposal and his drawings, talking about colors and history. Lucas sketched while Clara spoke of Saltcliff's past, storms that sank ships, the lighthouse's last beam in '73, her days cataloging books for fishermen's children. Her dementia, though a quiet shadow, didn't dull her stories. Some days, she'd pause, searching for a name or date, and Lucas would wait, never rushing her, his pencil still. "You've got a memory like a library," he said one afternoon, shading a sketch of the lighthouse with Clara's scarf-wearing figure at its base. "Every story's a book on the shelf." Clara laughed, a sound that felt younger than her years. "Some shelves are getting dusty, Lucas. But you make me want to dust them off." He looked up, his dark curls falling into his eyes. "Then let's do more than dust. Let's bring that lighthouse back. For real." Clara's breath caught. Her proposal, written 20 years ago, had been a dream she'd buried with George. The town council had called it a waste, and her sister Margaret had scoffed, saying Clara was chasing ghosts. But Lucas's voice held no doubt, only a fire that warmed the fog in her mind. "You're serious," she said softly. "Dead serious," he replied, flipping his notebook to a new page. He sketched a renovated lighthouse, its tower alive with murals, surrounded by kids painting on easels. An art center. A place for people like me, who can't afford fancy classes. You've got the land, the vision. I've got the hands. Clara's heart raced, a feeling she thought she'd lost to age. She pulled out her savings ledger, modest, but enough from years of frugal living and George's pension. "It'd take everything I have," she warned. Lucas grinned. "Good thing I work cheap." They spent weeks planning. Lucas brought blueprints he'd borrowed from the library, and Clara dug up old photos of the lighthouse in its prime. They laughed over her faded handwriting, argued over paint colors. Clara insisted on sea blue, Lucas pushed for sunrise gold, and dreamed bigger than the cliffs. For Clara, it was more than a project. Lucas's visits were a lifeline, pulling her from the loneliness that had settled like damp rot. Her dementia made her fear losing these moments, but with Lucas, she felt anchored, her mind sharp in his presence. One evening, as the sun sank into the sea, Lucas arrived with a canvas. "Close your eyes," he said, guiding her to the porch. When she opened them, she gasped. It was a painting of her, not as she was now, but as a young librarian, standing in the lighthouse doorway, a book in hand and a smile that mirrored her spirit. "It's how I see you," Lucas said, his voice soft but steady. "Always." Clara's eyes stung. She reached for his hand, her fingers trembling not from age but from a warmth she hadn't felt since George. "Your trouble, Lucas Reed," she whispered, but she didn't let go. The town, however, was less enchanted. At Millie's diner, fishermen swapped theories over coffee. "That boy's after her money," one grunted, eyeing Lucas as he passed with his paint cans. "Poor Clara's lost it," another said, shaking her head. "Talking to a kid like he's her sweetheart." The whispers grew sharper at the market, where women clutched their baskets and muttered about shame and loneliness gone mad. Clara heard the gossip but walked with her chin high, her cane tapping defiantly. Lucas, too, ignored the stares, though they stung more than he let on. The first real trouble came from family. Clara's sister, Margaret, arrived unannounced one afternoon, her heels clicking on the cottage floor like a judge's gavel. At 68, Margaret was all sharp edges, tight bun, tighter smile, eyes scanning the cottage for resale value. "What's this I hear about you and that mural boy?" she demanded, spotting Lucas's sketchbook on the table. "People are talking, Clara. They say he's got you wrapped around his finger." Clara poured tea, her hand steady. "His name's Lucas, and he's my friend. We're planning to restore the lighthouse." Margaret's laugh was brittle. "Friend? He's a teenager. And that lighthouse nonsense? You're throwing away your savings, my inheritance, on a pipe dream. Or is he throwing it away for you?" Clara's jaw tightened. "It's my money, Margaret. And my life." Margaret leaned closer, her voice low. "You're not yourself, Clara. I know about your doctor visits. Memory problems, right? You need protecting, not some boy with paint on his hands." Clara froze, her teacup halfway to her lips. She hadn't told Margaret about the dementia, but Saltcliffe's doctors weren't as discreet as they claimed. "I'm clear enough to know you're here for the cottage, not me," Clara said, her voice sharp. "Lucas believes in something bigger. You wouldn't understand." Margaret left in a huff, but her words lingered like a storm cloud. That evening, Lucas arrived to find Clara quieter than usual, staring at the lighthouse painting. "What's wrong?" he asked, setting down his brushes. "My sister thinks you're using me," Clara said, her eyes meeting his. "And she knows about my condition." Lucas knelt beside her, his gaze fierce. "Let them talk. I'm not here for your money, Clara. I'm here for this." He tapped the lighthouse sketch. "And for you." She smiled, but the doubt lingered. Across town, Lucas faced his own storm. His mother, Lila, caught him at home, her hands raw from cleaning houses. "You're spending too much time with that woman," she said, her voice trembling. "People are laughing at us, Lucas. They say you're chasing her bank account." "I'm chasing a dream, Ma," he shot back. "Clara's the only one who gets it." Lila's eyes softened, but her fear held firm. "You're 19. You should be building a future, not playing house with someone who won't be here in 10 years. Lucas's chest ached, but he didn't waver. As he left for Clara's, the town's whispers followed him, and Margaret's car idled down the street, watching. Clara and Lucas sat together that night, sketching under the flicker of a lantern, their hands brushing as they traced the lighthouse's future. The world outside was growing louder, but inside, their bond was a quiet rebellion. If this story stirs your soul, keep reading, the storm's only beginning. The Saltcliffe wind carried a chill by October, but inside Clara Thornton's cottage, a warmth was growing that no storm could touch. At 75, Clara had spent years cataloging her life in neat stacks of books and memories, her early-stage dementia a quiet thief nibbling at the edges. Lucas Reed, the 19-year-old muralist with paint-flecked hands and a heart full of dreams, had become her anchor. Their evening sketching lighthouse plans had turned her seaside home from a museum of solitude into a canvas of possibility. But in a town where tradition clung like barnacles, their bond was a spark waiting to ignite a fire. What happened next would set Saltcliffe ablaze. Clara and Lucas's connection had deepened over weeks, their talks weaving art and history into something neither could name yet. Lucas would arrive after his art classes, his backpack stuffed with pencils and dreams of a lighthouse reborn as an art center. Clara, her silver hair catching the lantern light, shared stories of Saltcliffe's past, tales of shipwrecks, of her husband George's sketches, of a town that once rallied around its beacon. Her dementia made some memories slip, like sand through fingers, but Lucas's presence steadied her. He'd finish her sentences when she faltered, not with pity, but with a grin that said they were in this together. One stormy evening, as rain lashed the cottage windows, Clara sat across from Lucas, her hands tracing the edges of his latest sketch, the lighthouse, its tower covered in murals, kids painting at its base. The idea had grown from a dream to a plan, with Clara's savings earmarked for permits and materials. But her diagnosis loomed larger now, a doctor's warning echoing, "Live while you're still you." She looked at Lucas, his curls damp from the rain, his eyes bright with belief in her. Something shifted, a tide turning in her heart. "Lucas," she said, her voice steady despite the storm outside, "I want to marry you." The room went quiet, save for the rain's drumbeat. Lucas's pencil stopped mid-stroke, his eyes wide but not with shock, more like he'd been waiting for the words. "Clara," he said, setting the sketch aside, "you mean that?" "I do," she said, her blue eyes fierce. "I've spent my life waiting for George to come back, waiting for my sister to care, waiting for time to run out. I won't wait anymore. I want to live with you now." Lucas leaned forward, his hand finding hers. Her fingers, lined with age, fit perfectly in his calloused grip. "I'm not here for your money or your cottage," he said. "I'm here because you make me feel like I can be more than a kid scraping by. If you'll have me, Clara, I'm yours." She smiled, a blush rising she hadn't felt since her 20s. "Then let's make it official. Before the fog takes me." The moment felt sacred, but Saltcliffe was no sanctuary. The news spread like oil on water, sparked by a neighbor spotting Lucas leaving Clara's cottage late, his sketchbook tucked under his arm. By morning, the whispers had turned vicious. At Millie's diner, fishermen shook their heads over coffee. "Clara's lost her mind," one muttered. "That boy's playing her for a fool," another said, eyeing Lucas's mural on the bait shop, now defaced with red paint spelling gold digger. The market buzzed with gossip. "She's 75, he's 19. It's unnatural." Clara walked through it all, her cane tapping defiantly, but the words stung like salt in a wound. The real storm hit when the town council caught wind. Saltcliffe's leaders, a gray-haired panel of fishermen and shopkeepers, called an emergency meeting to review the couple's marriage license application. Public morality, they claimed, was at stake. Clara and Lucas arrived at the town hall, a weathered building smelling of fish and old wood, to find a crowd spilling onto the steps. Inside, Councilman Hargrove, a barrel-chested man with a voice like gravel, read the motion. "We propose denying the license of Clara Thornton and Lucas Reed due to concerns of undue influence and community standards." Clara stood, her cane steady, her voice sharper than the sea wind. "Undue influence? I'm a grown woman who knows her mind. Lucas is my choice, not my puppet." Hargrove's eyes narrowed. "Mrs. Thornton, we've heard about your health. Memory issues. We're protecting you." The crowd murmured, and Clara's heart sank. Her dementia, a private battle, was now a public weapon. Lucas stepped forward, his jaw tight. "She's clearer than any of you. This isn't about her health, it's about your small minds. The room erupted, some clapping, others shouting. The council postponed the vote, but the damage was done. That night, Lucas returned to the bait shop to find his lighthouse mural ruined, black paint slashing the beacon's light. "Thief," it read. He stood in the rain, fists clenched, until Clara found him. "They can't break us," she said, her hand on his shoulder. "Not if we keep painting." Family opposition hit harder. Clara's sister, Margaret, stormed into the cottage the next day, her face a mask of fury. "You're making a fool of us," she snapped, tossing a newspaper on the table. The headline screamed, "Widow, 75, plans to wed teen artist." "You're sick, Clara. He's using your condition to get your cottage. I'll fight this with courts, doctors, whatever it takes." Clara's eyes blazed. "You want my cottage? Take it. But you can't take my heart." Margaret left, vowing to stop the madness. Across town, Lucas faced his mother, Lila, in their cramped apartment. Her hands shook as she scrubbed a pan, her voice low. "Lucas, you're my boy. You're throwing your life away for an old woman who won't last. What about college? Your art? Our name?" Lucas's voice cracked. "Ma, Clara believes in my art more than anyone. She's not holding me back, she's lifting me up." Lila turned away, tears falling into the sink. "They're laughing at us. You're breaking my heart." That night, Clara and Lucas met at the lighthouse, its crumbling tower looming in the moonlight. They spread out their plans, the wind tearing at the pages. "They'll fight us," Lucas said, his voice heavy. "The council, your sister, my ma." Clara took his hand, her grip firm despite the tremor of age. "Let them try. We'll light this lighthouse, and we'll light this town." As they walked back, a car's headlights lingered on the cliff road, watching. The storm was rising, and Saltcliffe was about to see what love could do. If this fight for love moves you, keep reading, the battle's just begun. The October winds howled through Saltcliffe, rattling the shutters of Clara Thornton's cottage and carrying the town's whispers like driftwood on the tide. At 75, Clara had faced her share of storms, losing her husband George, grappling with early-stage dementia, and now defending her love for Lucas Reed, the 19-year-old muralist whose art had rekindled her fire. Their plan to restore the abandoned lighthouse as an art center had become a beacon of hope for them, but to Saltcliffe, it was fuel for scandal. As the town council loomed with its threat to block their marriage license, Clara and Lucas stood on the edge of a cliff, not just of stone, but of judgment. What happened next would either break them or light up the coast. Since Clara's bold proposal, the town's gossip had turned venomous. Lucas's lighthouse mural, once a point of pride, was now a target, its vibrant beams slashed with black paint and cruel words, thief and shame. Clara, her silver hair tucked under a scarf, helped Lucas scrub the vandalism clean, her cane propped against the bait shop wall. "They think they can erase us," she said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. Lucas, his curls damp with sweat, grinned. "They'll need more paint than that." Their lighthouse plan gained momentum despite the hostility. Lucas recruited a handful of art students from his community college, kids with dreams bigger than their wallets. They met at Clara's cottage, spreading blueprints across her oak table, sketching murals for the lighthouse tower. Clara, her blue eyes sharp despite occasional memory lapses, shared her old proposal, its pages brittle but brimming with vision. She calculated costs, her savings would cover the foundation, but they'd need community donations for the rest. Lucas posted flyers around town, "Revive the Lighthouse, an art center for Saltcliffe's youth." Some scoffed, but a few, a barista, a retired teacher, slipped crumpled bills into the donation jar at Millie's Diner. The town hall meeting loomed, the council's vote on their marriage license set for a chilly Friday night. Clara and Lucas knew it was more than a bureaucratic hurdle, it was Saltcliffe's judgment day. The whispers had grown into accusations, fueled by Clara's sister, Margaret, who'd spread word of Clara's dementia to paint her as vulnerable. "She's not herself," Margaret told anyone who'd listen, her eyes on Clara's seaside cottage. Lucas's mother, Lila, echoed the town's fears, begging him to think of his future and leave Clara behind. But Clara and Lucas were undeterred, their bond a quiet defiance against the storm. The town hall was packed, the air thick with the scent of salt and tension. Fishermen in flannel, shopkeepers with crossed arms, and curious teens filled the creaking benches. Councilman Hargrove stood at the podium, his voice booming. "We're here to decide if Clara Thornton and Lucas Reed's marriage undermines our community's values. There's concern about her health, memory issues, and his intentions." Clara rose, her cane tapping the floor, her navy dress crisp despite the weight of eyes on her. "I'm Clara Thornton," she began, her voice clear as a bell. "I've lived here 50 years, shelved your books, taught your kids. Yes, I have dementia, early, not end stage. It doesn't cloud my heart. Lucas isn't after my money or my cottage. He's after a dream we share, to light this town again with art and hope. Deny us, and you deny my right to choose my life." The room stirred, some nodding, others muttering. Lucas stood beside her, his paint-splattered jeans a stark contrast to the council's suits. "I'm not here to take," he said, his voice steady but fierce. "I'm here to give murals, classes, a lighthouse for kids like me who've got nothing but dreams. Clara's the only one who saw that in me. Judge her, you judge us all." A teenager in the back, one of Lucas's art students, stood. "The lighthouse project's real. I'm painting there tomorrow. Clara's teaching me history. They're not crazy, they're building something." A few clapped, but Hargrove banged his gavel, calling for order. Margaret stood, her face tight. "Clara's sick. She's not thinking straight. This boy's manipulating her for her savings. I demand a medical review before any license is granted." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd, but then Millie, the diner owner, stood. "I've known Clara 30 years. She's sharper than half this room. And Lucas? He's painting our town alive. Let them be." The council wavered, faces softening. Hargrove cleared his throat. "We'll vote next week, after reviewing Mrs. Thornton's health records." The meeting ended in chaos, some cheering, others shouting. Clara and Lucas left hand in hand, the wind biting their faces but not their resolve. Outside, they found another blow. Lucas's mural on the post office, a scene of fishing boats under the lighthouse's glow, was defaced with red paint. Fool. Lucas's shoulders slumped, but Clara squeezed his hand. "They're scared of us," she said. "That's why they're loud." That night, Lucas stayed late at Clara's cottage, sketching by lantern light. Her dementia surfaced briefly. She called him George, then caught herself, her eyes wet. "I'm still here," she whispered. Lucas nodded, his hand over hers. "And I'm not going anywhere." Community support flickered like a candle in the wind. The art students rallied, cleaning the mural and adding their own touches, gulls, waves, a scarf like Clara's. A local reporter, intrigued by the lighthouse lovers, wrote a piece, "Widow and Artist Defy Town's Judgment." It spread online, drawing both praise and venom. Margaret doubled down, meeting with a lawyer to challenge Clara's competence, while Lila left a tearful voicemail, "Lucas, come home. You're breaking us." But Clara and Lucas pressed on. They visited the lighthouse, its rusted door creaking open to reveal dusty floors and cracked windows. The art students joined them, hauling paint cans and brooms, their laughter echoing. Clara taught them about the lighthouse's history, her voice strong despite a forgotten name or two. Lucas sketched her teaching, her scarf bright against the gray stone. "This is our answer," he said. "We build it, they'll see." As they left, a car idled on the cliff road, Margaret's, her silhouette sharp. The council vote loomed, and Saltcliff's tide was turning, but toward what? If this fight for love and legacy stirs you, keep reading, the light's about to shine. The Saltcliff cliffs stood resolute against the October gales, but the town's heart was shifting like sand under the waves. Clara Thornton, 75, and Lucas Reed, 19, had weathered a storm of gossip and vandalism, their love and lighthouse dream battered but unbroken. The town hall meeting had left Saltcliff divided, with Clara's public admission of her early-stage dementia fueling both sympathy and suspicion. Her sister Margaret's accusations that Lucas was exploiting Clara's condition for her seaside cottage had lit a fuse, and the council's looming vote on their marriage license was the spark. As Clara and Lucas poured their hearts into restoring the lighthouse, the town watched, waiting to see if love could outshine judgment. What happened next would make Saltcliffe's shores glow. The week after the town hall was a blur of defiance and work. Clara and Lucas, joined by a scrappy crew of art students, hauled paint cans and scaffolding to the lighthouse, its weathered tower a skeleton of hope. Clara's savings covered the initial repairs, rusted beams replaced, cracked windows patched, but the project needed more. Lucas's flyers had sparked donations, a hardware store owner gave discounted lumber, a fisherman offered old nets for decor, and Millie from the diner started a lighthouse fund jar that jingled with coins. Clara, her silver hair tied back, taught the students about Saltcliffe's history, her voice steady despite occasional stumbles over names. Lucas painted beside them, his murals creeping up the tower, waves, gulls, and a scarf-clad figure that was unmistakably Clara. The vandalism hadn't stopped. Another mural, this one on the library wall, was defaced with "Mad Old Lady" in red paint. Lucas scrubbed it clean, his jaw tight, but Clara's hand on his arm steadied him. "They're shouting because they're scared," she said, her blue eyes fierce. "We're building something they can't tear down." Margaret, however, was relentless. She'd hired a lawyer, a slick man from the city named Carter, who filed a petition to delay the marriage license, citing Clara's diminished capacity. She also took to social media, posting on Saltcliffe's community page, "My sister's being manipulated by a teenager. Her dementia makes her vulnerable. Save Clara from ruin." The post went viral locally, shared with snake emojis and comments like "disgraceful" and "poor old woman." Clara read it at her kitchen table, her hands trembling not from age but from fury. "She's selling my soul for likes," she told Lucas. Lucas, his curls falling into his eyes, slammed his sketchbook shut. "Let's fight back with truth. The lighthouse is our proof." He posted photos online, students painting the tower, Clara laughing with a brush in hand, donation jars filling. His caption read, "This is Clara Thornton's dream, not her downfall. Join us." The response was mixed. Some praised their grit, others called it a stunt. But a few locals, teenagers, a librarian, even a councilman's wife, showed up to help, bringing paint and sandwiches. The council vote arrived on a rainy Thursday, the town hall packed tighter than a sardine can. Clara wore a sea-green dress, her cane polished, her chin high. Lucas stood beside her, his paint-splattered jeans a badge of pride. Councilman Hargrove read the motion, approve or deny the marriage license of Clara Thornton and Lucas Reed. Margaret and Carter sat in the front row, her face smug, his briefcase open with medical reports. Lucas's mother, Lila, stood at the back, her hands clasped, her eyes torn between love and fear. Clara spoke first, her voice cutting through the murmurs. "You've read my sister's posts." "Yes, I have dementia, early, not end. I forget names sometimes, but not my heart. Lucas isn't stealing from me, he's building with me. Look at the lighthouse, your kids are painting it, your donations are fixing it. Deny us, and you deny Saltcliffe's future." Lucas stepped up, his voice raw. "I'm not here for Clara's money. I'm here for her vision. She saw me when no one else did, a kid with nothing but paint and dreams. This lighthouse isn't just ours, it's yours. Vote for us, you vote for hope." The art students stood, holding signs, "Light the lighthouse." Millie spoke, her voice gruff. "I've seen Clara's books balance for decades. She's no fool. And Lucas? He's painting our town's soul." A fisherman nodded, adding, "My boy's learning art there. Let them be." Margaret's lawyer argued coldly, waving Clara's medical records. "She's vulnerable. This marriage risks her estate." But the council, swayed by the crowd's murmurs and the lighthouse's progress, voted. Hargrove's voice was reluctant but clear, license approved, 4-2. The room erupted, cheers, boos, gasps. Clara and Lucas embraced, her cane clattering to the floor. Margaret stormed out, muttering about appeals. Lila slipped away, tears in her eyes. Outside, the rain had stopped, and the lighthouse stood silhouetted against a clearing sky. Margaret's next move was vicious. She posted a new thread online, sharing Clara's medical history with cruel precision. She forgets her own address. He's a predator. The post spread, drawing hateful comments, but it backfired. Locals who'd seen the lighthouse work, kids painting, Clara teaching, posted back, "Clara's sharper than you, and Lucas is saving our town." A viral hashtag emerged, #LightTheLighthouse. The lighthouse gained momentum. More students joined, and a local band offered to play at the opening. Clara and Lucas worked late, her dementia surfacing in small ways. She'd repeat a story or misplace a brush, but Lucas covered for her, his sketches capturing her words. One night, he showed her a new mural, Clara as a young librarian, holding a book under the lighthouse's glow. "This is you, always," he said. Lila visited Lucas, her voice soft. "I saw the lighthouse. You're doing good, son. But I'm scared for you." He hugged her, whispering, "Trust me, Ma." Margaret, meanwhile, met with Carter, planning a new legal challenge. The town was splitting, some saw love, others scandal. As Clara and Lucas planned their wedding at the lighthouse, a car idled on the cliffs, watching. If this battle for love and light moves you, keep reading, the beacon's about to shine. The Saltcliffe Lighthouse stood like a sentinel against the November sky, its weathered stones now patched and painted, a testament to Clara Thornton and Lucas Reed's defiance. At 75, Clara had poured her heart and savings into reviving the beacon, her early-stage dementia a shadow she refused to let dim her love for the 19-year-old muralist who'd brought color back to her life. Their marriage license, won after a fierce town hall battle, was a hard-fought victory, but Saltcliffe's whispers hadn't faded. Clara's sister, Margaret, and Lucas's mother, Lila, led the charge against them, their accusations of manipulation and shame echoing from docks to diner. As the wedding day loomed, the town held its breath, waiting for love to either falter or shine. What happened next would make the coast sing. Clara and Lucas planned a simple wedding at the lighthouse, not in a church but under the tower they'd brought back to life. Clara chose a cream dress with lace sleeves, her silver hair to be pinned with a seashell comb George had given her decades ago. Lucas, scraping together his earnings from mural commissions, bought a plain silver ring, its simplicity a promise he'd etched into every sketch. They invited the art students who'd painted the lighthouse, Millie from the diner, and a local pastor who'd known Clara since her librarian days. The lighthouse itself was the guest of honor, its tower now alive with murals of waves, gulls, and Clara's scarf-clad figure, glowing under fresh paint. The town buzzed with anticipation. Some saw the wedding as a scandal, others a spectacle, but a growing number, moved by the lighthouse's revival, saw hope. Lucas's flyers and the #LightTheLighthouse hashtag had spread online, drawing reporters from nearby cities. "Widow and artist to wed at restored lighthouse," one headline read, with photos of Clara teaching kids and Lucas painting. Margaret's venomous posts, accusing Lucas of exploiting Clara's dementia, still circulated, but they were drowned out by comments like "she's living her truth" and "he's painting our future." The lighthouse opening was set for the same day, a celebration to follow the vows, with a local band and art displays by the students. The wedding morning dawned crisp, the sea a mirror of silver under a pale sun. Clara stood in her cottage, her dress soft against her skin, her hands trembling as she fixed the seashell comb. A memory flickered, George pinning it in her hair on their own wedding day, but she pushed it aside, focusing on Lucas. "I'm not foolish," she whispered to her reflection. "I'm in love." Lucas, in a borrowed black suit, waited at the lighthouse, the ring in his pocket heavier than the ocean. His curls were tamed, but his eyes held the same fire that had painted Clara into his murals. The lighthouse grounds were alive with color, murals gleaming, tables set with driftwood centerpieces, and kids running with paintbrushes. The pastor stood at a makeshift altar, a wooden arch draped with nets. Guests filled the space, art students, Millie, the hardware store owner, even Councilman Hargrove, his scowl softened. Reporters hovered, cameras clicking, their lenses catching Clara's cane as she walked the cliff path, arm in arm with a student named Tessa, who'd become her shadow. Lucas stood tall, his heart pounding as Clara approached, her smile brighter than the sea. The pastor began, his voice carrying over the waves. Dearly beloved, we gather to join Clara Thornton and Lucas Reed, but before he could finish, the crowd parted with gasps. Margaret stormed forward, her coat flapping, her lawyer Carter at her side. This is a disgrace, she shouted, pointing at Lucas. He's a predator, using my sister's illness for her money. The crowd erupted, cameras flashing. Lila pushed through, her face pale, tears streaming. Lucas, stop this, she cried. You're my son, not her husband. You're throwing your life away. Clara's hand tightened on her cane, but her voice was steel. Margaret, you've never cared for my heart, only my cottage. Lila, your son's building a future, not breaking it. I choose him, and he chooses me. Lucas faced the crowd, his voice cutting through the chaos. You call this shame? Look around. This lighthouse was dead until Clara believed in it. She believed in me when you didn't. We're not stealing, we're giving this town its soul back. Tessa, the art student, raised a sign, Light the Lighthouse. Others joined, chanting, drowning out Margaret's protests. The pastor raised his hands. Let's finish what we came for. Clara and Lucas exchanged vows, their voices steady despite the shouts. Lucas slipped the silver ring onto Clara's finger, whispering, You're my beacon. Clara, tears in her eyes, replied, And you're my light. The crowd's cheers overwhelmed the dissenters. Margaret stormed off, Carter trailing. Lila stood frozen, then slipped away, sobbing. Cameras captured every moment, the vows, the protests, the kiss under the mural tower. The lighthouse opening followed, a band playing as kids unveiled their art. Reporters swarmed, their headlines already forming, 75-year-olds wedding lights up coastal town. That night, Clara and Lucas sat on the lighthouse steps, the sea quiet below. They'll talk forever, Clara said, her hand in his. Let them, Lucas replied, kissing her fingers. We're shining. The world was watching, and Saltcliffe's light was just beginning to burn. If this moment of love and defiance moves you, keep reading, the legacy's only starting. The November sea was restless, its waves crashing against Saltcliffe's cliffs like the town's lingering whispers. Clara Thornton, now 75 and newly married to Lucas Reed, the 19-year-old muralist, had lit a spark at their lighthouse wedding that refused to dim. The ceremony, held under the mural tower they'd restored, had been a triumph over Margaret's accusations and Lila's pleas, but the storm wasn't over. Social media and local papers buzzed with headlines, 75-year-old widow weds teen at lighthouse, scandal or love. The Lighthouse Art Center, opened the same day, was a beacon of hope, but Saltcliffe's judgment cast long shadows. Clara's dementia, a quiet battle, made every moment precious, and Lucas's art was her anchor. What happened next would prove their love was no fleeting tide. The morning after the wedding, Clara woke in her cottage, the silver ring on her finger glinting in the dawn light. Her cream dress hung by the window, a reminder of vows spoken amid chaos. Lucas slept on the couch, his suit jacket draped over a chair, his sketchbook open to a drawing of the lighthouse glowing under stars. Clara smiled, but a memory lapse flickered. She called him George before catching herself, her heart sinking. I'm still here, she whispered, touching the ring to ground herself. Lucas stirred, his curls a mess, and grinned. Good morning, Mrs. Reed. They laughed, but the world outside was less kind. Newspapers called the wedding Saltcliffe scandal of the century. Social media was a battlefield. Some posted hashtag Light the Lighthouse with photos of the mural tower, others spewed venom, he's a grifter, she's senile. Clara's sister, Margaret, fueled the fire, sharing a new post, my sister's lost to a teenager's scheme. Her dementia blinds her. The comments stung, but Clara and Lucas avoided their phones, focusing on the lighthouse. Lucas returned to his community college art classes, his backpack still tattered, his jeans still paint-splattered. Classmates whispered, some mocking, where's your sugar mama? But others, who'd seen the lighthouse, asked to join the project. Why are you still here? A professor asked, half joking. Aren't you rich now? Lucas shook his head. Clara's money's in the lighthouse, not my pocket. Art's my wealth. His grades climbed, his murals sharper, as if Clara's belief had honed his talent. The Lighthouse Art Center was taking shape. The tower, once a crumbling relic, now stood proud, its murals glowing in the salt air. Art students, led by Tessa, painted daily, their laughter echoing as they turned nets into sculptures and driftwood into easels. Clara taught history classes, her voice steady despite occasional stumbles over dates. This lighthouse saved ships in '62, she'd say, her scarf catching the breeze. Now it'll save dreams. Donations poured in, a hardware store gave paint, a fisherman's wife baked for the kids. Millie's Diner jar overflowed, and the hashtag Light the Lighthouse hashtag trended regionally, with posts like Saltcliffe's beacon is back. Margaret's campaign faltered. Her latest post, accusing Lucas of draining Clara's savings, was met with backlash. Tessa posted a video, Clara teaching kids about shipwrecks, Lucas painting beside her. "This is manipulation," she captioned. Locals commented, "Clara's sharper than Margaret, Lucas is building, not stealing." A reporter from a coastal paper visited, expecting scandal but finding a thriving art hub. Her article, Lighthouse Lovers Defy Odds, went viral, with photos of Clara's scarf in the murals and kids painting. The narrative shifted, scandal became inspiration. Clara's dementia surfaced in quiet moments. One night, she forgot the year, asking Lucas about a storm from '73 as if it were yesterday. He gently corrected her, sketching the storm from her story, his lines capturing her memory. "You keep me here," she said, her hand on his. Lucas nodded, his eyes fierce. "Always." Margaret, undeterred, met with her lawyer, Carter, planning to contest Clara's will, claiming undue influence. She called Clara, her voice cold. "You're throwing away our family for a boy. I'll protect you, even if you hate me." Clara hung up, her heart heavy but resolute. "She's protecting her wallet," she told Lucas. Lila, Lucas's mother, was softer but still torn. She visited the lighthouse, seeing kids paint and Clara teach. "You're doing good, son," she said, her hands raw from cleaning houses. "But this marriage, it's not right. You're too young." Lucas hugged her. "Ma, Clara's my home. You'll see." Lila left, her eyes wet, her heart wavering. The lighthouse drew crowds, locals, tourists, even a gallery owner who offered Lucas a show. Clara watched with pride, her cane tapping as she guided kids through the tower. One evening, as the sun set, Lucas unveiled a new mural, Clara as a librarian, holding a book under the lighthouse's beam. "This is us," he said, his voice breaking. Clara's eyes welled. "You make me forget the fog." The town's tide was turning. Fishermen who'd scoffed now nodded at Lucas. Millie put a lighthouse photo on her diner menu. But Margaret's lawyer was drafting papers, and a few locals still hissed scandal at Clara. As they sat on the lighthouse steps, the sea roaring below, Lucas whispered, "They're not done fighting us." Clara squeezed his hand. "Then we keep shining. If this story of love and resilience lights your heart, keep reading, their legacy will burn brighter." The December wind swept across Saltcliffe's cliffs, carrying the scent of salt and the hum of change. Clara Thornton, now 76 and married to Lucas Reed, the 19-year-old muralist who'd painted her heart back to life, had turned the town's abandoned lighthouse into a vibrant art center. Their wedding, a defiant stand against gossip and family protests, had shifted Saltcliffe's tide. The lighthouse, its tower alive with murals, was no longer a relic but a beacon, drawing locals and tourists alike. Clara's early-stage dementia, once a weapon in her sister Margaret's hands, was now a quiet challenge she faced with Lucas's support. The town's whispers had softened, but not all hearts had warmed. What happened next would etch their love into Saltcliffe's shores forever. The weeks after the wedding were a whirlwind of light and shadow. The Lighthouse Art Center, christened Clara's Beacon, buzzed with activity. Art students, led by Tessa, painted murals on the tower's walls, weaving Clara's stories of shipwrecks and storms into waves and gulls. Clara taught history classes, her scarf a bright splash against the gray stone, her voice steady despite moments when a name or date slipped away. Lucas, balancing college classes and mural commissions, led workshops, his hands guiding kids who'd never held a brush before. Donations poured in, paint, lumber, even a grant from a coastal arts council, turning the lighthouse into a hub for Saltcliffe's youth. The media storm lingered, but its tone had shifted. The coastal paper's article, "Lighthouse Lovers Defy Odds," went viral, with hashtag #LightTheLighthouse trending beyond Saltcliffe. Tourists snapped photos of the murals, locals boasted about our beacon, and a gallery owner offered Lucas a solo show. Clara watched with pride, her silver ring glinting as she clapped for students unveiling their art. Her dementia surfaced in quiet ways. She'd repeat a story or forget a student's name, but Lucas was there, sketching her words into murals to keep them alive. "You're my memory," she told him one night, her hand in his. Margaret's crusade faltered. Her online posts, accusing Lucas of exploiting Clara's condition, lost traction as photos of Clara teaching and Lucas painting flooded social media. One evening, Margaret appeared at the lighthouse, her coat buttoned tight, her face softer than Clara had seen in years. "I saw the kids painting," Margaret said, her voice low. "You're doing something real here. I was wrong to fight you so hard." Her eyes flicked to the cottage, still a prize in her mind. "But I'm still worried, Clara." "Your health," Clara's gaze was steady. "You worried about my cottage, not me." "I forgive you, Margaret, but I don't trust you." Margaret left, her heels clicking on the stone, her apology half-formed but heavy with regret. Clara didn't dwell on it. She had a lighthouse to run. Lucas's mother, Lila, was a different story. She'd slipped away from the wedding in tears, torn between love for her son and fear for his future. But one afternoon, she arrived at the lighthouse, her hands raw from cleaning houses, her eyes red. The tower was alive with kids painting, Clara teaching them about a 1962 storm. Lila watched, silent, as Lucas helped a boy mix colors, his laughter echoing. "You're happy," she said when he approached, her voice breaking. "I thought you were throwing your life away, but this is your life." Lucas hugged her, his curls brushing her cheek. "Ma, Clara's my home. This lighthouse is our family's too." Lila nodded, tears falling. "I'm proud, son. I was wrong." She joined the next workshop, her hands clumsy with a brush but her heart open. Clara's final years were her brightest. At 77, then 78, she taught at the lighthouse, her cane a familiar tap on the stone floor. Her dementia progressed. Some days she'd forget the year or call a student George, but Lucas's murals anchored her. He painted her stories, the lighthouse saving ships, her as a young librarian, their wedding under the tower. Students called her Miss Clara, their voices warm with respect. Tourists came, leaving donations. A school named a library corner after her. Clara cut ribbons for new mural unveilings, her smile wide, her scarf catching the sea breeze. The town's heart softened. Fishermen who'd once scoffed now tipped their caps. Millie put a lighthouse mural on her diner wall. Even Councilman Hargrove, once a skeptic, donated paint. But shadows lingered. Margaret met with her lawyer, Carter, whispering about Clara's will, and a few locals still muttered scandal at the market. Clara ignored them, her focus on the kids, the lighthouse, Lucas Point. One evening, as the sun dipped into the sea, Lucas unveiled a mural spanning the lighthouse's base, Clara holding a book, the beacon's light framing her like a halo. "This is you, forever," he said, his voice thick. Clara, her eyes wet, leaned into him. "You make me forget the fog, Lucas." They danced slowly on the lighthouse steps, her cane forgotten, his arms steady. The sea roared approval, but a car idled on the cliff road, watching. If this story of love and legacy lights your soul, keep reading, their light will shine on. The Saltcliffe Sea whispered softly under a January sky, its waves a gentle lullaby for a town forever changed. Clara Thornton, now 80, had spent her final years lighting up the coast with Lucas Reed, the 19-year-old muralist who'd become her husband and her heart. Their lighthouse, Clara's beacon, stood as a vibrant art center, its muraled tower a testament to their love and defiance against a town once steeped in judgment. Clara's early-stage dementia, a shadow that had grown heavier, couldn't dim her spirit, but time was claiming what gossip couldn't. As Lucas painted her memories into the lighthouse walls, Saltcliffe watched, no longer with whispers but with awe. What happened next would make their story a legend. Clara's final years were a tapestry of light. At 77, 78, then 79, she taught at the lighthouse, her cane tapping the stone floor as she shared stories of Saltcliffe's storms and shipwrecks. Her dementia progressed. Some days she'd forget the year, call a student George, or pause mid-sentence, searching for a word, but Lucas was her anchor. He'd sketch her stories as she spoke, turning tales of 1962's great gale into murals of crashing waves, her scarf-clad figure always present. "You keep me here," she'd say, her blue eyes soft, and he'd reply, "You're my forever, Clara." Students called her Miss Clara, their voices warm with love, and tourists flocked to Clara's beacon, leaving donations and snapping photos of the murals. The town had transformed. Fishermen who'd once muttered scandal now brought their kids to paint. Millie's Diner displayed a lighthouse mural, its menu boasting Clara's special coffee. The hashtag Light the Lighthouse hashtag had spread nationally, with art blogs praising Lucas's work and Clara's vision. A coastal arts council awarded the lighthouse a grant, funding free classes for kids. Clara cut ribbons for new mural unveilings, her smile wide despite her frailty, her seashell comb glinting in her silver hair. Even Councilman Hargrove, once a skeptic, called her Saltcliffe's heart. Margaret, Clara's sister, had retreated after her failed campaign to stop the marriage. Her lawyer, Carter, had found no grounds to contest Clara's will, which left her savings to the lighthouse, not Margaret's coveted cottage. One evening, Margaret visited, her face lined with regret. "I thought you were lost," she said, standing by a mural of Clara as a young librarian. "I was wrong. You've built something I never could." Clara nodded, her voice gentle but firm. "You saw my cottage, not me. I forgive you, but this is my legacy." Margaret left, her apology heavy but incomplete, her eyes on the sea. Lila, Lucas's mother, had fully embraced her son's path. She joined lighthouse workshops, her hands learning to paint, her pride in Lucas outweighing her fears. "You're my boy," she'd say, hugging him after classes, her cleaning rough hands soft on his curls. Lucas, now 24, balanced college and the lighthouse, his murals gaining fame. A gallery show in the city featured his work, titled Clara's Light, with paintings of her stories. Critics raved, but Lucas stayed humble, crediting Clara. "She's the vision," he told reporters. Clara's dementia worsened by 80. Some days, she thought she was back in the library, shelving books with George. Lucas never corrected her harshly, instead painting her memories, lighthouses, books, their wedding. One night, she forgot his name, her eyes distant. "Who's the boy with the paints?" she asked Tessa. Lucas, overhearing, smiled through the pane, sketching her scarf into a new mural. "I'm your light, Clara," he whispered later, her hand in his .AT80. Clara's body grew frail, her steps slower. One spring morning, she sat on the lighthouse steps, the sea calm below. Lucas painted beside her, his latest mural showing their wedding, her cream dress glowing under the tower's beam. She leaned against him, her voice faint. "You made my years shine, Lucas." He kissed her hand, the silver ring still bright. "You made me, Clara." That night, Clara passed peacefully in her cottage, Lucas holding her hand, Tessa and lighthouse students nearby. Her final words were, "Keep the light on." The town mourned, not with whispers but with reverence. The funeral filled the lighthouse grounds, students and locals crowding the cliffs. Fishermen lowered their flags, Millie closed her diner, and reporters captured the scene, a coffin draped with a scarf, murals glowing around it. Margaret attended, silent, her face pale with shame. Lila wept, clutching Lucas's arm. Lucas, now 24, carried on. He finished his art degree, dedicating it to Clara, and ran Clara's Beacon, expanding classes and murals. The lighthouse became a coastal landmark, drawing artists and dreamers. Lucas painted a final mural, Clara holding a book, The Lighthouse's Light Eternal. "This is her," he told visitors, his voice steady. She taught me love builds forever. Saltcliffe was reborn as an art hub, its cliffs alive with creativity. The town's heart, once cold, now beat with Clara's legacy. If this story of love and light touches you, keep reading, their legend lives on. The Saltcliffe cliffs stood timeless under a spring sky, their jagged edges softened by the legacy of Clara Thornton and Lucas Reed. 5 years had passed since Clara, at 80, left this world, her hand in Lucas's, her final words, "Keep the light on," etched into the heart of a town once divided by their love. Clara's beacon, the lighthouse they'd revived, was now a coastal landmark, its muraled tower a canvas of dreams that drew artists and dreamers from beyond Saltcliffe's shores. Lucas, now 24, carried Clara's vision, his paints blending her memory with the sea's eternal song. The town, once a crucible of gossip, now told their story with pride. What happened next turned a scandal into a legend that would shine forever. Clara's passing had marked Saltcliffe, but not with sorrow. Her funeral, crowded with students, fishermen, and reporters, was a celebration of a life lived fully. The lighthouse grounds, draped with her scarf-themed murals, glowed with her spirit. Lucas, his curls still untamed, stood by her coffin, a silver ring matching hers on his finger. "She taught me love builds forever," he told the crowd, his voice steady. The town listened, not with whispers but with reverence, their flags lowered, their hearts open. Clara's sister, Margaret, stood at the back, her face pale with shame, while Lucas's mother, Lila, clung to his arm, her pride outweighing her past fears. In the years since, Lucas made Clara's beacon a beacon indeed. He finished his art degree, dedicating it to Clara, and turned the lighthouse into a thriving art hub. Free classes taught kids from fishing families to paint, sculpt, and dream. Murals spread across Saltcliffe, on docks, diners, even the town hall, each telling a story of the sea, of Clara. Lucas's work gained fame, his Clara's Light Gallery show toured cities, critics praising the widow's muse in every stroke. But he stayed in Saltcliffe, living in Clara's cottage, its walls lined with her books and his sketches. "This is home," he told reporters, his hand on a mural of Clara holding a book under the lighthouse's beam. "She's still here." Saltcliffe transformed into a haven for artists. Tourists flocked to Clara's beacon, snapping photos of murals and leaving donations. The Coastal Arts Council named a scholarship after Clara, funding young painters. Millie's Diner, now a pilgrimage spot, served Clara's special coffee beside a mural of her scarf. Fishermen who'd once scoffed now boasted, "Our Clara lit the coast." The hashtag Light the Lighthouse hashtag lived on, shared with stories of kids who'd found purpose in the lighthouse's classes. A documentary, Clara's Beacon, Love Against the Tide, aired nationally, its scenes of Clara teaching and Lucas painting bringing tears to viewers' eyes. Margaret's regret grew heavy. After Clara's death, she'd abandoned her legal fight, the lawyer Carter admitting no court could challenge Clara's lucid will, which left everything to the lighthouse. One spring, Margaret returned to Saltcliffe, standing outside the cottage she'd once coveted. She sent Lucas a letter, her handwriting shaky. "I thought Clara was lost, but she found more than I ever did. I'm sorry." Lucas read it by the lighthouse, the sea roaring below. He didn't reply. Clara had taught him forgiveness, but some bridges stayed broken. Lila, Lucas's mother, became his biggest ally. She volunteered at the lighthouse, her cleaning rough hands now painting with pride. "You were right, son," she said at a mural unveiling, her eyes on a portrait of Clara. "She was your light, and you're ours." Lucas hugged her, his heart full. His siblings, once ashamed, now visited, their kids joining the art classes, calling Lucas Uncle Light. The town's transformation was Clara's true legacy. Schools taught her story in history classes, calling her Saltcliffe's Beacon. The lighthouse hosted festivals, its tower glowing with lanterns, kids' laughter echoing where silence once reigned. Lucas, now a renowned artist, painted a final mural, Clara and him, hand in hand, the lighthouse's beam cutting through a stormy sky. "This is us," he said at its unveiling, his voice breaking. "Love doesn't count years, it builds beacons." Families carried their regret like stones. Margaret, living alone across town, saw Clara's face in every mural, her greed a shadow she couldn't escape. Lila's family, once divided, now rallied around Lucas, their pride a quiet apology. But Clara and Lucas's story outlived them all. It spread through documentaries, art shows, and whispered tales at Millie's, a legend of a 75-year-old woman who defied time and a 19-year-old who painted her heart eternal. Their love, born on a cliffside path, shook Saltcliffe, silenced skeptics, and proved one truth: love has no age, no limit, and no apology. If this story of a lighthouse lit by love has touched your heart, share it to remind others that purpose and passion can shine through any storm. Visit Clara's Beacon online to see the murals that keep her light alive, and let their story inspire you to build your own.